This is Friday, October 28th, 2016. And it's a couple of minutes before 1 o'clock in the afternoon here in Northern California. Getting off to a late start this morning. Today I wanted to talk about a lot of different things. First, I wanted to backtrack to a statement I made last week about the idea of defecting to Russia if Hillary becomes POTUS. Well, you know, it's highly unlikely that I would really follow through with something like that, since I don't even speak a word of Russian, except for maybe I know how to say no, yet. But other than that, I got nothing, you know. And of the conversations I've heard in Russian, there's very little likelihood I have the aptitude to learn a language like that. But let me tell you, you'll never meet a more patriotic American than myself. And like Thomas Jefferson said, dissent is the highest form of patriotism. Look, on the morning of 9/11, I tried to join the National Guard. I was 43, so I was too old. That's what I was told. But I went out and I got American flag stickers. I put them over the back speakers of my car, visible to everybody. And I had just bought a house in Las Vegas, and you couldn't buy any flags back then. They were all sold out everywhere. So I made my own flag, painted it out of watercolors, I think, and maybe a bed sheet or something like that. And I put it right on the roof of my house. I must have taped it up there. I had tile roofing there at that house, and so I probably used some kind of tape to affix it to the roof. But it was a way to rebel against this kind of terrorism. At the time, I bought the official story, hook, line, and sinker. Of course, since then, I found out a lot different. If you look up a group of architects and engineers called the Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, you'll see one of the big reasons why I changed my tune. And I didn't believe that 3 airplanes could do this kind of damage, since one of the buildings that fell wasn't even hit by an airplane. But anyhow, I just want everybody to know that you won't find a greater patriot than myself. But I'm really disgusted with the direction my country's been taking my entire life. We had a coup d'etat. I firmly believe, at the assassination of JFK. It was a money printer's coup d'etat. So, you know, this is something I think we all have to understand, is that America is under assault. And the way that these people have been succeeding as long as they have is because they've kept us divided. Well, if you look into the people at the top of this thing, the people that hold the purse strings, the Federal Reserve, you find out they don't care about political affiliation. They don't care about political economic philosophy, like whether you're a socialist or a capitalist. They don't care whether you label yourself a conservative or a liberal. Okay, all they want to do is keep controlling the currency. But for us to all be divided and think that our problem is because, you know, half the public is socialist and the other half is capitalist or whatever, this is a falsehood. This is a lie from the pit of hell. You know, and at times it gets really hard. You know, like they say, it's hard to see the forest for the trees. Well, I would say it's hard to know the truth for all the lies. It's very tough on people. So we all end up with a lot of blind spots. And it's very important that we turn to God. Very important. You know, it's okay that you have a therapist or something for this or that, but certain things in life we have to turn to God for. It doesn't matter if your opinion goes against 99% of the people. And it could be half the people on one side of the aisle and half on the other, but you're disagreeing with all of those people, and they think their problem is with each other, and you're stepping outside the box and you're saying, no, don't you understand this is a satanic ploy to keep you at each other's throat, keep you divided, making you think that each other's interests are the problems. It's sort of like this. With socialism, it's the Robin Hood thing, right? You take from the haves to give to the have-nots. Sounds good, right? To the socialist thinkers, those that prescribe that ideology, that philosophy. But then to the capitalists or crony capitalists, whatever, in this economy, that's all there is basically, is crony capitalists. if you're benefiting from crony capitalist policies, you can't just call yourself capitalist. You're prescribing to crony capitalism. But if you believe that high housing costs are good because it's good for you and for all the existing homeowners, then it's understandable why you believe that. But is that any different from the Robin Hood philosophy, where people think that it's good that you have to pay more in taxes? See, the cost of living and taxes are the same thing. It's just that when you pay taxes, it goes to a government entity. When you pay cost of living, it goes to a private entity, right? So to me, both these groups, though they're at each other's throats, and they firmly believe and they're entrenched in their own philosophies, they don't understand that the devil's in the details here. And both beliefs are prescribing, they're buying into a lack of progress, buying into regression, buying into this idea that, they're not seeing the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is the debasement of the currency through a rising cost of living. Well, again, taxes are cost of living. It doesn't matter. So it's so important that I explain this to people, because sometimes I think this is the only reason that I came, to this planet, is to try to describe to people what's going on here and how simplistic this is. So if you want to know the evidence for progress in a true capitalist system that's supply and demand based, that's free market based system, then the evidence is that your currency is going up in worth, particularly relative to essential human needs first: food, water, and housing. Those things you want to be as affordable as possible. You want your currency to go up in worth, not down. That shows regression, a lack of progress. But I wonder how many people understand that. And I wonder how many people, what it's going to take. That's what's scary to me, okay? As an outsider, I don't prescribe to either philosophies. I don't buy this is capitalism and you can have free capitalism in the midst of crony capitalism. You can't. It's got to be one prevailing over the other. You can't have, regulations removed from the vulture capitalists and then have consumer protection regulations removed from we the people. Okay, but that's what we've got going on here. So I understand both people's point of view, but I have to say to myself, wow, I want nothing to do with either one of these things. I mean, I admire somebody that's taken a vow of poverty because I understand where they're coming from. How do you enjoy prosperity when poverty is still on the rise? I mean, aren't you just buying into the social Darwinian economic principle? The survival of the strongest, let the weak perish. Yes, you are, to me. That's what's happening here, and people don't see it. They've got blind spots because they say, well, if it's good for me, then it must be good, and it doesn't work that way. And this is how we are at the place we're at. Now, I understand people that get confused because the establishmentarians have deliberately complicated everything. They've made it so it's very difficult to understand. And, so it's very understandable why people have these blind spots. So when I hear even the likes of, the great contemporary economists, guys like Max Kaiser, and he admits that he gets confused sometimes because this is the object of these establishmentarians. They want people disempowered, and when you're confused about stuff, you're disempowered, you're ignorant, you're weak, and you are ineffective. And this is what they want. They don't want people with understanding and knowledge because that's power. But we've got to cut through the nonsense, which is the vast majority of what we're hearing. What we think we understand is basically nonsense, and it's deliberate. They don't want people just to plain out to get it. That's it. Just to get it. Just to understand the difference between economic progress, which is political progress. The two are one and the same, and economic and political regression. But I would say it could be measured in wealth disparity. I could say it could be measured in the worth of your currency, maintaining its value, or conversely, diminishing in value and worth. But that's exactly what's going on here. Our currency continually diminishing in worth, and we're chasing our tails. We're worried about, oh, we're going to stimulate the economy with new jobs and all this. Jobs are dwindling. That's the way it's going to be. And the vast majority of people are doing jobs that are very unimportant. In fact, they're just leeches and mooches, and their jobs revolve around the problems persisting. Then there's other people that are doing very important jobs, like what Alex Jones does, and anybody else in the media that's out there exposing these black hats in high places. And what I could say to that is, thank God for the white hats in high places. Well, we won't need all these brave journalists and reporters like Alex Jones has someday, because once the problems are fixed, we're not going to need it. Once the evildoers are subdued and placed in their proper place, which is hell, underground, separated from decent humanity, we need these jobs. They're critically important. It's just like if drunk driving dried up tomorrow and people stopped killing themselves on the highway, we wouldn't need the highway patrol, but we still need them. We had a horrible head-on wreck here recently where a young man and woman were killed, and there's just a few-month-old child was killed, and I guess he got distracted or something. Maybe he was killing the whole family. Who knows? But ran head-on into a big rig truck at high speed. So you understand that we need people now that someday we won't. So their jobs are critically important now, but someday they won't be once we solve problems. In the meantime, if we started solving problems, you understand all the people would be out of work. All the people that are involved in the debt industrial complex would be out of work if the debt was paid. That's a matter of fact. All the people in the crime industrial complex, the vast majority, would be out of work, because if there was no more financial desperation, most of the crime would disappear overnight. The social welfare industry, okay, that would be, we wouldn't need it, okay, if there was no poor people. So you understand the problem with getting rid of poverty. And then the dubious war, okay, we wouldn't need to be, buying into these dubious wars. We wouldn't have this problem. So really, our whole society is based on maintaining the societal ills, the societal ills industrial complex, the poverty industrial complex, which is, the crime industrial complex and the debt industrial complex, the dubious warfare industrial complex. It's all part and parcel. The abortion industrial complex, the drug industrial complex, the prostitution industrial complex. It goes on and on and on. But it should not be hard for people to understand. I'm not being cynical. I'm not being a wise guy. I'm not radical. I'm not illogical. And I'm not nuts. Quite the contrary, okay? It doesn't matter if 99% of the people disagree with your point of view. If you're right, you've got to stick to your guns, and you've got to try to get it across to them, as difficult as it is. And it is difficult because, again, everybody is so duped. We're also steeped in this madness from birth, buying into this idea that it's okay to be beholden to these money masters when they do nothing for humanity. I mean, if we're going to have this massive and growing wealth disparity, can't it at least make a semblance of logic? Why don't we exalt the farm workers, okay, out there growing our food, the truck drivers? Okay, if there's got to be a wealth disparity, why don't we subjugate all these paper pushers out there, the real estate agents, okay, the lenders, okay? See, my own industry. So, people that think I'm picking on their industry, I'm not. I know I was picking on Rob Dew last week because his always, fixating on this, how bad a $15 an hour, mocking this idea of $15 an hour. And I've heard some of the other reporters too. I don't know where they get this stuff from. But really, if minimum wage was comparable to what minimum wage was 50 years ago, okay, it'd be a lot closer to $30 an hour. And that's not hyperbolic. It's mathematical, and it can be figured out. What was $1.50 an hour minimum wage 50 years ago, in terms of buying power, how much would that be today? Okay, so do your math, and you look at the facts, and you find out, do your own research, because I already know. That's not exaggeration. That's the truth. So we've really regressed a lot, so much that people just don't even see it. They can't believe their head's real. But that's the reality. When you see housing prices go up 10,000% in some cases, okay, and that's not exaggeration. Again, it's math. $8,000 for a house in Santa Cruz 50 years ago. Okay, $800,000 now. Okay. So that is a 10,000% increase. Do your math, and you'll see that I know what I'm talking about out there. So anybody that thinks that high housing costs are a good thing, you've got a lot to learn. Okay. And, and I suggest you start learning right now. Pick up your books. Pick up a great book by Adam Smith, the great economist from over 200 years ago. Read The Wealth of Nations. Understand what every nation's greatest wealth, greatest asset, greatest treasure is simply a willing workforce. That's it, because everything gets done with a willing workforce. Often this is common, uneducated workforce, okay, that's doing the most important, the most critical jobs in our society, okay? And these are the ones we're going to subjugate and marginalize. It makes no sense.